Welcome to the ManUp podcast, where we challenge men to rise up, live bold, and step into the life God has called them to. In today's bonus camp episode, Terry sits down with camp director Matt Johnson to share powerful stories, life-changing moments, and what makes ManUp Camp an unforgettable experience. Let's dive in.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the ManUp podcast. I'm your host, Terry Gwaltney. Today is going to be a bonus episode. This is kind of our pre-camp episode. I'm sitting here with Mr. Matt Johnson, our resident camp director. For some of you guys that are old camp veterans. Matt, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be on here.
You know, next month is actually camp, depending on when you listen to the show. And man, this is probably some of the most exciting time of the year. I think for us around here, it's kind of like Christmas.
It's exactly like that. I actually had a guy in camp last year tell me that he was here from year one, this being year three, but he said it's like Christmas for him. He said he can't wait for that day to come around, and it's hard to wait for a year to roll around to a new one.
So, yeah, I have dreams of somewhere in the future being able to gather all these guys up for a spring event. So maybe we'll talk about that sometime as camp continues to grow, because 1 year is obviously far too long. And for us, I think, really you start getting 3 or 4 months out and it kind of becomes the buzzword. You start seeing people wearing the swag, talking the talk,
Yeah.
Getting excited and starting to fill their groups. And I know today we've got guys listening that, they have no clue what we're talking about. They've never experienced camp. They can be listening from overseas or wherever they're at in the country. And then we've got the diehards, that are going to be every year. And I'm just curious, share with the audience one of your favorite camp stories. Why you, what is it that makes you become so excited? For me, it is the stories, because the stories represent the people, which is why we do what we do.
There are so many individual stories that came out of the last 2 years. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head that's worth spitting out there. I would say, to start out with, the generality of the camp. I think going into our first year, a lot of guys didn't know what to expect. And for you guys that are coming, you take a little hike through the woods and come out to our campground. And, some guys came out and they walk out of the woods and they see the first campfires burning and they're like, oh, this is serious. We're camping. And then it kind of grew from there. Guys started building relationships before they ever got to camps. You'll see that if you've ever seen our promo video or followed any of our on our website, any of that kind of thing. But guys had real connection right off the bat. Our first year, we had 85 guys out there, and I didn't expect for guys to be hit so hard emotionally and spiritually right off the bat. The first year on Friday night, I had guys coming to me from their groups at campsites saying we're having Saturday night conversations on Friday night. And then the big thing that year was probably the fact that we had several guys get saved during camp. Stories came out of that. Things where that guy went back, got baptized, then his family got baptized, and other people, and it becomes a generational blessing instead of a generational curse. And that which touches us when we sit here afterwards and we start hearing these stories, and people call us or text us or email us and say, well, this happened at my church after camp. And it just chills run through you, because you're like, and it may even be a guy that's never been to church or been interested in a camp like this, and they come and they see what it's like. And you had that experience with a gentleman in your camp, but it's interesting to see how it affects different people. And the stories just go on and on and on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, last year, there's probably two that stuck out for me, and one was right in my campsite. And I remember I was preparing we were preparing for Sunday morning, and I had went into my tent to change for some reason. And I was overhearing a conversation around a campfire, and there's a gentleman that had been there and probably got more wrecked that weekend than any of the other guys that I interacted with. I mean, they probably all had their own story of, their experience, but I had a front row seat to this one. But what I heard in the campsite when I was in my tent, just not eavesdropping, but we weren't being quiet. And he said, this is the first time, and this gentleman was almost 7 years old. He said, it's the first time in the last 40 years that I've not woke up hearing my dad's voice tell me what a worthless piece of crap I am. He said, I just give that all back last night. I forgave him. His dad's long been dead, and, Saturday night we talked about unforgiveness. And, a lot of times unforgiveness is not punishing the perpetrator. Mm-hmm. It's holding us back, in our minds and, all these different things that are happening. And to watch that guy just kind of come to life. There was a burden and a load he realized he didn't have to carry. That was probably one of the most powerful moments for me, during camp last year. And, if you're listening today, those are the kind of things that just happen. I mean, if you had to describe really what goes on at camp is we just show up with a bunch of dudes from all different walks of life. Some from a spiritual walk, walking close to God, some no walk with God at all, from all different kind of denominational backgrounds, all different economic backgrounds, age groups, ethnicities, all of that, and just kind of create space for God to show up, and He never disappoints.
That's it. I mean, that's another thing I said right after the first year. It's amazing. You take a little short hike through the woods and come out on the other side, and you see what God's always there, but it's like God was waiting on everybody. It's like we came out of the woods and everybody said they could feel a difference, feel a change, a load coming off for the weekend. And I think a lot of guys go into it just to have fun and camp for the weekend. But when people start telling their story or a story around the campfire, because that's what you're going to do all weekend. Guys are going to tell stories, they're going to tell jokes, they're going to tell funny stories. But if somebody's vulnerable enough that weekend to tell their story or share their story, what they'll find out is they're not alone in their story. Mm-hmm. Our first year, I shared just a little bit of my story from stage. And even in my situation, I thought my whole life that my pain was bigger than the next person's pain, and my issues were bigger than the next person's issues. And when I walked off stage that evening, I had 5 different gentlemen come up, and I'm not a hugger. In fact, there's a few of us that have discussed the ways of getting out of hugs. You can do a stiff arm. There's other ways to get out of it. But I had 5 guys give me big hugs and say that my story helped them so much. And I had no idea. I had no idea that me telling them what I went through could somehow help them. And so that's what I think guys eventually, whether it's the first night or Sunday morning or whenever, if they're willing to share their story, your story's probably going to help somebody else. And then you're probably going to end up with a lifelong friend out of that as well. Yeah.
And, you don't have to come prepared to share your story. Maybe you need to just hear somebody else's story. Whatever the case might be, camp just kind of becomes for you what it needs to be for you. One of the things that I've realized, though, is, this is a weekend to remember. Because one word from God can change your life forever. And maybe you're listening today and maybe you're leading a campsite. Again, for some of you that are listening to understand the dynamics of camp, the entire camp's broke down into groups of no bigger than 10 guys per campsite, all of those led by what we call an adventure captain. So that guy either invites 9 other guys to come hang out with him for the weekend, Or guys just sign up randomly and say, put me wherever in a camp, and they just become friends. What we've found is a lot of guys have buddies, but few guys have brothers. You may have a golfing buddy, you may have a fishing buddy, you may have a hunting buddy, but man, do you have a brother? Like somebody that you would consider to be a band of brothers. Most guys, they can't name more than 5. A lot of us maybe couldn't even name 1. But that may be the weekend where you meet a guy and you form that band of brothers, and he's that guy you call at 2 o'clock in the morning when everything goes and hits the fan. You know, if you don't have one guy you can call when it hits the fan, and you don't have one guy you can call when the best thing in your life happens to celebrate with, you need to be at camp, because that's where you meet those kind of guys. And those are the kind of guys that need to be in your campsite. And so, you know, as we're getting closer to camp, I think right now, they told me this morning, we have almost 50 captains. I want to say it was 49, something like that. That number will grow. We anticipate more than doubling again this year, you know, with the number of campers that are going to be there.
Hey guys, I just wanted to invite you to the ManUp Adventure Camp, October 24th through 26th here in Stoneford, Illinois. This year is going to be epic. It's literally a 3-night off-grid primitive camping experience for men. Like boots in the dirt, spiritually charged, fire in the gut adventure for men who are done playing it safe. I hope to see you around a campfire in October. This is Terry. We'll see you there.
Talk to the audience today, you know, the guy maybe that's leading a camp. He signed up to be a captain. Now, what does he need to be doing? How serious does he need to be taking those 9 guys being at camp this year?
Well, definitely needs to be taking that seriously. You want to have a full camp for multiple reasons, even if it's just to win the tug of war competition. But you want to have a full camp. A lot of times it's just as simple as knowing. Sometimes there's a guy in your life you know that needs to be at camp. Sometimes you just want a buddy that's going to be a handful of your good buddies that you want there in the camp with you. And maybe it's a combination of those things. For whatever reason, a lot of guys in the last couple of years wait till the last minute. And man, in Southern Illinois, you don't want to wait till the last minute to try to fill a group of guys, whether it be hunting season coming up or just give them an out because it's too soon. But it's a lot harder to fill your camp than you would think. So you want to start asking guys early and often. One of our gentlemen here recently posted it out on his socials and just said, hey, I'm trying to fill a camp, and that worked really well for him. Guys just started messaging him and saying, hey, I want to be in your camp, and they were guys he didn't even think about. And again,
That's a great idea.
For a lot of us guys, we know things happen for a reason, so if a guy that you didn't even expect reaches out and wants to be in your camp, he's supposed to be there. So it's not a bad idea to throw it out there on the socials if you're somebody that does that kind of thing. Otherwise, we've had church groups. We've had groups that just formed with, like Terry said, where we've put, if you want to be a captain and you want me to fill your group with guys that, random guys, you want to meet new friends and you want to become brothers over that weekend. That's a thing as well. I mean, we've had the gamut. I mean, we've had groups that are straight up been friends since they were little kids, and then we've had groups that didn't know each other. The thing again is it all works out in the end.
Yeah.
It's just something about guys sitting around a campfire at night, sharing some good barbecue or whatever you may bring to your camp. So be thinking about what you're going to cook. We had a camp last year that didn't have a whole lot cooking, and they still did great. But anyway, it's fun and it's something guys will enjoy if you can get them there. So just do what you can to get your group together.
Yeah, guys, one of the things that I would say is, pray about who needs to be in your group, and then make that personal. Make your invitation personal. Because what if that weekend is the difference between somebody going back and getting a divorce? What if that weekend is the difference between somebody going back and, let's just be real, ending their life? What if, and you fill in the blank. That's the importance of this. And so first I'd say pray about it. Then make it personal. As guys, we want to be involved in something where we feel like we have a role, we have a purpose. Maybe part of that purpose is you need a guy that, is an experienced camper. Most of the guys that come to this camp aren't. You're listening today. I'm not a camper. I don't own a tent. Not a problem. Most of the guys there, that's not their story. That is their story. They weren't either. They don't come for the camping experience. They come for the camaraderie. They come to hang out with the guys. They come and they just have fun. They come for a weekend to relax and refresh and refocus and disconnect. We digitally disconnect over that weekend. And so they go back just different. They go back as a different dad, a different husband, a different man, a different perspective and a different outlook. So I just encourage you, make it personal. Maybe you need a guy that he can cook. Maybe you've got a guy that's got some gear. We've tried to answer all the questions that guys throw up, like, well, I don't have a tent. You know what? You can rent a tent now. We got a tent you can rent. Obviously, Meg, you can rent that. We've tried to do everything but come and pick you up to get you there because we have seen the benefits of guys that just show up and they get impacted. And so I don't know what your story is, but I know somebody else needs to hear it. And I know there will be a story that's at camp this year that you could benefit from. And we just want to encourage you to come out. What would you say to guys maybe that are on the fence, they're listening to this, like, man, I don't know anybody, I'm not a camper, too old, too young. All the excuses that we hear from guys that actually showed up and said, well, this is why I wasn't going to come, but I'm glad I did.
Yep.
What would you say to those guys?
Just do it. The Nike slogan, just do it.
Just do it.
We had, as you said, you had a gentleman in your group last year that was 70, and we helped him get in and out of his tent and he was able to make it for a couple nights. So if you're younger than 70, you don't really have an excuse. The first camp like this that I went to, there was a gentleman that was, I think, 88. So, age can't be a thing. We've got plenty of guys, including myself, up until the last 3 or 4 years of this. I hadn't camped since I was a teenager, and really, it's not necessarily my thing, but it's not even about that. You get out there, and like Terry said, the camaraderie that you have with the other guys. Obviously, if you've looked at the website, we play some games on Saturday and hang out, eat meals together. It's just a fun time. So once you get there, we've not had a problem with people coming back. Our first year, we had 9 camps. Last year, we had 21 camps. And as Terry said this morning, we had 50 camps, and we'll probably end up with anywhere from 10 to 20 more. So we're growing not only because it's a need for men, but because they get there and they enjoy it. And they go, once you get there and you see what it's about and you enjoy it, you go back and tell people, and that's why it's growing. It doesn't grow if people are not having a good time and not getting anything out of the experience.
Yeah. I know right now, again, I like to attack all the excuses. You know what? The devil, the word for devil is diablo. That means devil. And it comes from it's the root word of diabolical. And the devil has a strategy, and it's an assignment against you and your family. And this is, I can tell you, one of the last places that he would want you to be, because it just seems like guys get awakened to my problem is not unique. I just heard 15 other guys that share the same problem, what Matt was saying. Oh, and me being able to overcome that is not a stretch, because I just heard 15 guys that said they used to be where I was at and they're not there anymore. That gives you hope. And so I know this year we've got guys coming from Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee, Missouri, Kentucky, Indiana, Nebraska. Am I missing anything?
No, that's the one I was getting ready to throw in.
I think that's the ones that I'm aware of right now. Why you throw that out? Because if you're sitting there telling yourself, well, that's just too far for me. Come on. Come on. Would you go take your dream trip? How far would you drive to save your marriage? How far would you drive to change the legacy of your family? How far would you drive if you was sick, and to get to the nearest Mayo Clinic? You would do whatever it took. And that's what I'm challenging you to do today. Maybe you, or on the other hand, you know a guy that needs to be there. How bad does he need to be there? He's giving you an excuse, well, he can't afford it. Can you? Can you afford for him not to go? Is it important enough for you to buy his ticket? Guys, the amount of money that we spend on things that are important to us pales in comparison to buying, I think a ticket now is $125 or something. Make it happen for somebody else. Pay it forward. Do what you've got to do to get guys at camp. One of the things I had heard, and maybe you're one of the guys that are sitting there listening, well, I don't feel right about leaving my family for a weekend. Well, that's admirable. I dare say you probably left your family for things that are a lot less important, but I'll give you that, okay? That is important. But what if you was to come back a changed man? Don't look at this on 2.5 days or 2 nights away from your family. Look at from the perspective of who you're going to come back as. And maybe you're a different man for the next 2 decades of your life. What if you come back as a better husband? Because we're going to talk to you about that. What if you come back as a better dad? And we're going to talk to you about that. What if you come back and you're more present? What if you come back and you are the spiritual leader of your household and you step more into that role? Those are the kind of things that can happen over this weekend. So it's an investment, but I can promise you it's worth it.
Definitely. For you guys that have watched Terry's podcast or watched the ManUp podcast, one thing that Terry asks guys a lot of times is what they want to leave their legacy. And where we had this event is at Legacy Farm. And it's kind of funny to me. I don't even know. Terry can probably tell where Legacy Farm name came from. But when he called it Legacy Farm, at the beginning, it kind of bothered me because I've never, if you've listened to Casting Crowns has a song out, and they say that Only Jesus is the name of the song, and they want to talk about not leaving a legacy, that they just want people to remember Jesus, which is very admirable. But what I found, and if you I Googled legacy, the meaning of legacy, and the meaning of legacy was the lasting impact of a person's life on others, was the definition. And what I thought was interesting about that is you are going to leave a legacy whether you want to or not. It's all good in theory, but you're going to leave a legacy. And there's a reason we're having this event every year at Legacy Farm, because you're going to come in and you're going to take something away, and you're going to be able to add that to whatever your legacy is. You can take that back to your family and create generational blessings instead of generational curses. You can go back to your family and take something you've learned at camp, and that may be passed on through generations within your family, which is what we want to happen, what you want to happen. So, whether you like it or not, you're going to leave a legacy. And the fact that we're having this event at Legacy Farm is like everything else we've talked about. It's no mistake that it's there. And I think we can build on that over the coming years.
Yes, well said. I just literally, before we shot this podcast, finished a podcast that's going to be dropping shortly with a guy named Hank Parker. So if you're a little bit of an older generation, you probably grew up with his television show. He's a Hall of Fame bass angler. It's had multiple sporting shows, just tremendous guy. But he shared something I thought was interesting. He shared the story. He said, my great-grandfather was a drunk. My grandfather was a drunk. My dad was a drunk. On his mother's side of the family, he said all of their names were respectable pillars of the community. But my name, Parker, was trash. And he said, my dad at 50 years old radically got born again because somebody came by and challenged him to think about where he was going to spend eternity. He went on, got born again. Fascinating story. I'll give you a tease just to listen to the podcast. He spent the next 5 years sober, but doing his best to try to lead his 2 sons to Jesus. because for the first 50 years he had screwed up their life. His wife came back, started going to church. God radically changed them. And he talks about, and this is for somebody listening today, guys, it's not so much about where you start, it's how you finish. And that's really what legacy is about. And so you fast forward in this story, this guy's name was Mo Parker. He would leave tracks. Hank was becoming a very well-known professional angler. He said he had made more in 1 year than his dad had made in his entire lifetime. He wanted to have nothing to do with Jesus. And he was putting tracks in his son's sock, in his cigarette, in his ashtray because he knew he would smoke. He'd put them in his boat, his tackle box, and Hank was having nothing to do with it. He'd been sober for 5 years, hopped in a car. His best friend was his pastor. There were 7 men that went to Kansas, and they went to build, I think, youth homes. And he was really out of whack. You know, something was off that weekend. And the pastor, which was his best friend, asked him, like, Mo, what's the matter? And he said, my one son drives motorcycles. My other son screams down lakes with a motor on the back of his boat, bigger than the boat itself. And he said, I know they're just one slip away from going to hell. And he said, I just can't stop thinking about how much I want to see my boys saved. His pastor kind of consoled him, and he said, well, Mo, all we can do is pray. He said, I would gladly give my life for my boys to become born again. The next morning when they got up, they all 7 of them loaded up in their van to go back home, and only 6 made it back home. They were in a car accident. And the one that died was Mo Parker, Hank's dad. They got ready to do the funeral. His Bible was sent to his pastor, which was his best friend who was going to be officiating the funeral. He said he was just scrolling through his Bible and reading through some of his notes and stuff, and he run across a letter. And when he opened it up, he said, called the pastor's name. He said, if you're reading this before my funeral, he said, then I don't want you preaching a traditional message at my funeral. He said, I want you to preach the gospel. He said, because it may be the last time my boys get to hear the gospel on this side of eternity. And during his funeral service, both of his boys gave his life to Jesus. And he was sharing today that now he has grandchildren. All of his boys, his family are serving Jesus. All of his grandchildren. He now has great-grandchildren. And he was talking about the legacy that his dad left. And he talked about, my name used to be trash, but how God can use recycled trash and make it something new. And if you're listening to that today, I wonder what one event, what one word from God could change the trajectory of your family, of your legacy. It's not so much where you started. It's really how you're going to finish. Guys, legacy is not so much what you leave to people. It's what you leave in people. We'll see you at camp, October the 24th through the 26th. If you haven't bought your ticket, you need to hop online as soon as you hear this and do it. I hope we've covered most of the excuses. Guys, excuse is nothing but a reason stuffed into a lie. Man up, just do it. You'll be glad you did. Your family will for sure be glad you did. We'll see you next time on the ManUp Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the ManUp Podcast. We hope today's episode challenged and inspired you to become a better man, father, and husband. Remember, failure isn't final, and you're not alone on this journey. Mark your calendars for October 24th through the 26th, 2025, and join us at ManUp Adventure Camp in Stonefort, Illinois. It's a 3-day, off-the-grid experience designed to help you find purpose, overcome failure, and leave a legacy. No camping experience required, just a willingness to grow. Register now and find more resources at manupadventure.com. Stay connected with us, subscribe to our YouTube channel at ManUp Adventure Camp, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at ManUp Adventure, rate and review the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to help more men find their tribe. Thank you for being part of this movement. Let's continue to live on purpose and leave a mark that can't be erased.